Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Kelly in North Vancouver, Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. Billy Ocean. Oh, get out of my dreams, get into my car.
So good. And
well, it was 80s. I will give it that. I don't know about so good.
What are you talking? A Caribbean Queen. So good.
All right. And we're looking more for, well, we're not looking for it, but we're more for songs that scream 80s.
I think the
like some people are throwing out some Metallica here. Metallica has lasted, right?
Yeah.
And
it was more 90s,
there wasn't there wasn't the synth sound as well, right?
That would have been interesting if they went down that road. Metallica now with synth.
Yeah.
I don't think their fans would love that. I
think
think
David Bowie kind of did with the Let's Dance album. That to me, even though he is more 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
That album had an 80s feel to it.
I think the response we're getting most of in the inbox and on Twitter is "Everybody Have Fun Tonight" by Wang Chung.
If
people think 80s music, that's the first one they think of.
Yeah, we're getting a response from Farhan right now saying, please get me on the air, get me out of here. Today's guests, including Farhan, brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. Giants return to the LEC tomorrow to take on Kamloops. It's White Spot Legends Weekend to help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Canada-Russia Summit Series in 72. Giants will be wearing Canada jerseys that are replicas of the ones worn in that tremendous series. There will be 4 members of the 72 Canadian team there: Yvonne Cornway, Dennis Hull, Pete Mahovlich, and Dale Talent. And for you, Ryan, that's not Yvonne Cornway, that's Yvonne Cornway. Get all of your ticket packages and info at vancouvergiants.com/tickets as we bring in a Grey Cup weekend, of course, coming up. Farhan Lalji from TSN. Are you on your way to Regina? Are you in Regina? Where are you?
Oh, I've been in Regina since Tuesday night, my friend.
Okay.
I'm here at they've got the Bomber Media availability happening in about an hour, and I'm just getting ready for that.
What's going to happen with Zach Collaros? Do you expect him to be healthy, Doc Lalji?
I expect him to play. I don't know that I expect him to be 100% healthy. No, I think that there's some sort of a high ankle sprain type of injury there, and then maybe some ligaments involved. So do I think he's going to play, given it's the final game of the year? Yep. But, one of the things that Zach has done so well the last 2 years is move around, right? Like he's got a real uncanny ability to move around in the pocket and be really, really effective. He doesn't necessarily take off down the field for big yardage, but he can run sideline to sideline and keep plays alive and get the ball downfield. I think that's going to be a little bit difficult for him. And, he went through a period of time when he when he tore his ACL in Hamilton, and then after that he had the concussion issues. And, so you don't play the game that way. And then the last, year he's really started to play the game that way again. So I think he'll play, but I don't think he's going to be 100% for sure.
Bombers and Argos on Sunday. Most outstanding player awards are going to be doled out tonight. Farhan, we assume Nathan Rourke is going to be named most outstanding Canadian. Farhan, just want to get your thoughts on the fact that Nathan Rourke, beginning next week, is going to start trying out for teams in the National Football League.
I think it was inevitable, and I think he's earned the opportunity, right? There were some I was certainly hot on the prospects of him going, before his injury, right? Like I thought that was just absolutely going to happen. And then things cooled a little bit as, the injury occurred and time was missed. But there was still interest, right? And all of that is heated back up again. We've had a chance to talk to some people in the National Football League, and the interest in him is high. There's a strong market for him. I know that over 24 teams inquired. That doesn't mean 24 teams want to bring him in, but I would be surprised if he didn't go through 8 to 10 different NFL team workouts, and it'll be a case of finding the right fit, right? I mean, there's going to be teams that want to sign him, but are there going to be teams that want to sign him as a camp arm, or are they going to give him kind of a real path to a number 2 job, which I think is what he's looking for, along with a financial guarantee of the first year, right? So if he can get into the right situation, and, people have said to me, what do you think of Seattle? Fantastic situation. The perfect situation where you've got Geno Smith, who's performed so well that you're going to have to, Seahawks will probably have to re-sign him, and then you may not draft a guy. And then if you don't draft a guy, then you can bring in a guy like Nathan. If you're him, you don't want to compete with a draft pick, that kind of stuff. But, did I think after the injury there was a chance BC could get him one more year? I did. and that still could happen, right? If he's not going to go just for the sake of going. It really is going to have to be the right situation, and and my gut feeling is that he'll probably get that this offseason.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he's ready, Farhan?
Oh yeah, and I think the game has changed so much. People that want to talk about '80s music come to me and say, well, why don't we do what Warren Moon did? Why don't we do what Jeff Garcia did? And that's just not how it works anymore, right? You find out when you're Bo Levi Mitchell, and 4 years ago, Bo Levi Mitchell, in my mind, unquestionably was one of the top 50 quarterbacks on the planet. But he was 28 years old. And when he went through the situation with the NFL teams at that time, there was interest, but who wants to invest in a guy that's 28, and by the time you relearn the game and get comfortable enough to play, you're 30? That's just not how it's going to go. You have to do it earlier. And when you look at quarterbacks coming out of college now, I mean, whether you were, Lamar Jackson or others, I mean, these guys are so much more ready at an earlier age than they were back when people were listening to 80s music. In case I haven't made that point well enough.
Don't rip into us for 80s music. You at Diego's or Severance, whatever they called it on Kingsway back in the day. Come on, Farhan, please.
The fact that you said David Bowie was 60s, that made me feel old, because David Bowie, that Let's Dance album came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
Sure, it came out in the late 70s, maybe early 80s.
Yeah, no, in the early 80s. A Space Oddity, if I'm not mistaken, was 1968, 69. Hey, what would the Lions' plan B be if indeed Nathan Rourke doesn't come back?
I think it's Vernon Adams, to be quite honest. And, there just aren't a lot of obvious answers, right? Like, you don't get into the Bo Levi Mitchell sweepstakes, which it's going to turn into, for a quarterback that lost his job. You don't get into the Bo Levi Mitchell sweepstakes if you think there's a chance you'll get Nathan back at some point, either during the year or after the year, right? Like, you can't set your salary scale up that way. So my sense is that it'll be Vernon Adams, and then you'll get one of these other players, a Cody Fajardo or a Dane Evans or whoever doesn't land a starting job elsewhere, to come in on a similar type of deal that Vernon has, which got restructured before the trade, and compete with him, right? I think that's what'll happen. It'll be kind of a 1B, 1A, and incentive-based contracts, and they'll see if they can tread water that way. But what's interesting is that this year Vernon Adams came in and had to learn Jordan McSimick's offense. Mm-hmm. A year from now, if Nathan is gone, Jordan's going to have to tailor his offense more to Vernon, right? Like the dynamics of all of that are going to be different. And then if you bring in a quarterback, is he able to operate the same type of offense, right? Because you don't really want to be running two offenses as an organization. So, I'll be interested to see how that goes. But I do believe that one of the reasons they brought in Vernon was with an eye to the possibility of losing Nathan at some point in the next year or two.
Farhan, here we are 12 months later, and we got the same thing going. The hockey team is struggling. The coach is in trouble. There's names popping up on who could replace him. Now we got Rick Tocchet. Yesterday, Andrew Burnett. And the coach is still here. And what an awkward situation for the head coach of the Canucks twice now in 12 months.
Yeah, and you have to think that even Bruce knows that it's just a matter of when, not if, right? I mean, you can't continue this way, and you're not the GM's guy, and then you've got to, it almost feels like he's just said, F it, I'm going down my way, and I'm not changing, and I'm not doing what you're telling me to do because you're going to get rid of me anyway, so we're going to do this my way. And if I have to scratch Andrei Kuzmenko or whatever because I think that's what's warranted, I'm not going to take the big picture approach of the club in mind. I'm just going to do it this way. So, we're all wondering what the end game of management and ownership is, right? Like, do they want to keep him now so that they can continue to struggle and not get the bounce of a coaching change? Do we want to, wait and not hire a guy that, we then got to pay multiple players or people? Do we want to wait till later in the year because we can't let him run out the entire year because we want to get the new coach in with the players to establish systems? There's so many theories on what the timing is going to look like, but I think we all believe that, and none of us are advocating for it. Like, I'm not sitting here saying they need to fire him, but it's clear they've made that decision. It's just a case of when it's going to happen.
Farhan, back to the CFL. Argos Bombers Sunday. What happens?
Well, I mean, I think it really comes down to what happens with Zach, right?
Yeah.
And just how mobile he is and how functional he is that way, right? Because, a healthy Zach Collaros and a banged-up Zach Collaros are two different players, right? And it certainly changes how the Argos can approach defending them. But look, one of the things I've always said is the beauty of the Bombers is they have so many strengths in so many spots. They can win with their B game, right? So, I just think Winnipeg's going to find a way. You know what I see happening truly? I see a 2019 scenario where, they just got Zach for about 5 games, and they weren't sure how they could use him, and there was still the risk of concussion. So what did we see? We saw Chris Streveler come in at key points in the game and change the offense up and give it a completely different look, right? And I could see them doing that with Dakota Prukop, that, okay, you just went in as the short yardage quarterback on 3rd and 1, stay in. Right, stay in for 2 to 3 plays now, and we'll run a play action. We'll run a quarterback counter. We'll do some different things and just kind of throw it at you. And I could see them doing that and trying to manufacture different ways to get offense, because if it's Zach, it's going to be hand the ball off on run plays or get the ball out quick. They don't want to put him in a position to scramble because he's just not going to be able to do that, right? So I think they'll try to be as creative as possible, and Winnipeg's they're a complete team. They're not a one-man team, so I think they'll find a way because they always do.
See if they have a Diego's equivalent in Regina, and have yourself a great time there, Farhan.
Buddy, they got a lot of these. You know, what was the song that I heard coming out of the casino? And it was, Angel is a Centerfold.
Oh, that's I brought that up today.
Yeah,
beautiful song.
Jay Giles band
that
again.
That doesn't surprise me. So I went to have lunch at a restaurant attached to the casino, which was across our hotel. And when I came back through, I'm listening to "Angel Is a Centerfold."
Great song.
And
great song.
And I'm thinking about you guys.
Yeah, great song.
That's good to know. Farhan, we'll talk to you next week.
Take care, guys.
You bet. Farhan Lalji at TSN.